Picture a battlefield where the clash of swords isn't the only thing deciding victory, where hidden players move in the shadows, whispering secrets that topple kingdoms and rewrite history. This was the world of ancient espionage, a realm where spies were the unseen architects of empires, and a single coded message could mean the difference between triumph and ruin. Long before satellites or digital surveillance, these early operatives mastered the art of deception, crafting techniques so clever they still echo in modern spycraft. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the art of ancient espionage, spies, deception, and code in antiquity, to uncover how these shadowy figures shaped the course of civilizations with nothing but wit, courage, and a knack for staying invisible. Think about the most gripping spy thriller you've ever read or watched. Now imagine that level of intrigue, but real, and playing out thousands of years ago. From the deserts of Egypt to the palaces of Rome, spies operated in plain sight, using everything from invisible ink made of milk to hollowed-out coins hiding tiny scrolls. These weren't just tricks, they were lifelines in a world where information was power and power was everything. Kings relied on their networks of informants, generals paid fortunes for enemy secrets, and entire wars were won or lost based on who knew what and when. The stakes couldn't have been higher, and the methods, they were nothing short of brilliant. But here's what's truly fascinating. These ancient spies didn't just influence their own time. They laid the groundwork for the intelligence operations we see today. The same principles of disguise, misdirection, and cryptography that fooled pharaohs and emperors are still taught in spy schools around the world. So how did they do it? How did they communicate without detection, gather secrets without getting caught, and turn the tide of history from the shadows? That's the journey we're about to take. Together, we'll decode their strategies, step into their sandals, and discover how the art of espionage was born in the ancient world, a world where every whisper carried weight, and the best spies were the ones nobody even knew existed. Long before the term spy entered our vocabulary, ancient rulers were already playing the game of shadows with startling sophistication. Take the Egyptians. Their pharaohs didn't just rely on brute force to secure their borders. They deployed scouts disguised as merchants or diplomats, slipping into rival territories to map fortifications, count troops, and even spread rumors to sow discord. One surviving papyrus from the reign of Ramses II reveals how these operatives reported enemy movements along the Nile, allowing Egypt to strike preemptively. But it wasn't just about gathering facts. These early spies weaponized misinformation. A well-placed whisper about a pharaoh's divine wrath could make an entire army hesitate, turning the tide before a single arrow was loosed. Meanwhile, in Mesopotamia, the Babylonians took espionage to another level. King Hammurabi's code might be famous for its laws, but his reign also birthed one of history's first documented spy rings. Clay tablets detail how agents infiltrated rebel factions, posing as sympathizers to uncover plots against the throne. Their most cunning trick, using cuneiform tablets with seemingly mundane trade records, except the real message was hidden beneath a layer of clay, scraped away only by trusted hands. This wasn't just early cryptography, it was a masterclass in operational security. Then there's Sun Tzu, whose teachings in the art of war still resonate in intelligence agencies today. He didn't just advocate for spies, he categorized them into 5 distinct types, from local informants to double agents. His most chilling advice: all warfare is based on deception. Ancient Chinese generals took this to heart, employing everything from fake retreats to phantom armies made of straw dummies. but Sun Tzu's real genius lay in understanding the human psyche. By convincing enemies they were outnumbered or outmaneuvered, spies could win battles without bloodshed. It's a reminder that the sharpest weapon in espionage wasn't a blade, it was the ability to shape perception. What's remarkable is how these civilizations, separated by continents, arrived at similar strategies. Whether it was Egyptian scouts, Babylonian codebreakers, or Chinese strategists, they all grasped a universal truth: information isn't just power, it's survival. And as we'll soon see, these early experiments in shadow warfare would evolve into even more elaborate systems, from Rome's frumentarii to Byzantium's cryptographers. The game was just beginning. In the heat of ancient warfare, where armies clashed under the banners of kings and emperors, it wasn't always the strongest sword arm that decided the outcome, it was the unseen hand of the spy. Take the Greek kataskopoi, elite scouts who moved like ghosts through enemy territory. Disguised as shepherds or traders, they didn't just count soldiers, they studied terrain, noted supply routes, and even eavesdropped on campfire conversations to gauge morale. One famous account describes how a kataskopos infiltrated a Persian camp before the Battle of Plataea, uncovering plans that allowed the Greeks to ambush their overconfident foes. These weren't just observers, they were strategic chess players, moving pieces their enemies never saw coming. The Romans took this shadow war even further with their speculators, a network of spies who doubled as couriers, assassins, and saboteurs. When Julius Caesar marched into Gaul, his speculators didn't just scout ahead, they spread disinformation, convincing tribal leaders that his legions were invincible. By the time battle began, many enemies were already half defeated by fear. And let's not forget Hannibal, whose legendary crossing of the Alps was made possible by Celtic spies who mapped secret passes and negotiated safe passage with mountain tribes. Without their guidance, his elephants and his campaign might have ended as cliffside casualties. But perhaps no ancient commander understood the value of spies better than Alexander the Great. His network stretched from Greece to India, with informants embedded in Persian courts reporting everything from troop deployments to royal intrigues. Before the Battle of Gaugamela, Alexander's spies learned that King Darius had ordered the ground leveled for his chariots, so Alexander adjusted his tactics, luring the Persians into uneven terrain where their chariots were useless. It was a masterstroke of intelligence, proving that the right information at the right time could topple empires. What's striking is how these operatives didn't just gather intelligence, they weaponized chaos. A well-placed rumor could turn allies against each other. A sabotaged supply wagon could starve an army into surrender. Even something as simple as poisoning a single well could force an enemy to abandon a fortress. In a world where battles were won by inches, spies provided the leverage to tip the scales, and as warfare evolved, so did their methods, setting the stage for even more elaborate deceptions, where the line between truth and lies became the deadliest weapon of all. If there's one thing ancient spies understood, it was the power of a well-told lie. Deception wasn't just a tool in their arsenal. It was an art form perfected over centuries of shadow warfare. While the Trojan horse stands as the ultimate symbol of ancient trickery, most spycraft relied on subtler, more ingenious methods that rarely made it into the history books. Take the Persian Empire's network of merchant spies who traveled the Silk Road not just to trade goods but to trade secrets. With their caravans packed with silks and spices, they blended seamlessly into foreign markets while quietly noting troop movements, counting garrison soldiers, and even slipping gold to local informants. Their greatest advantage: nobody suspects the man haggling over rug prices of being a master intelligence gatherer. the Chinese took psychological manipulation to another level entirely. During the Warring States period, agents would plant carefully crafted prophecies in enemy territories, omens predicting disaster for whichever ruler opposed their master. These weren't random superstitions, but targeted campaigns designed to weaken morale and turn populations against their leaders. One scroll from the Han Dynasty details how agents spread rumors of a river turning blood red, accompanied by whispers that it signaled divine displeasure with the local warlord. Within weeks, desertions crippled his army. This wasn't just misinformation, it was psychological warfare centuries before the term existed. Then there were the Greeks, who elevated forged documents to an art form. Before crucial battles, they'd allow fake battle plans to accidentally fall into enemy hands, plans that conveniently exaggerated their weaknesses. When the enemy took the bait and attacked where they thought the Greeks were vulnerable, they'd walk straight into an ambush. The historian Polybius recounts how a single forged letter, purportedly from a Spartan general to his Persian allies, convinced an entire city to surrender without a fight. The letter's contents, a fictional account of Spartan reinforcements that didn't exist. What made these deceptions so effective wasn't just their cleverness, but their understanding of human nature. The best lies contained just enough truth to be believable. A Persian merchant really was selling carpets, he just happened to be counting city guards while doing it. A Greek document might accurately list troop locations, but exaggerate supply shortages. Even the Trojan horse worked because it played on the Trojans' pride. What victorious city wouldn't want such a magnificent trophy? These ancient operatives knew that the most convincing stories aren't pure fiction, but carefully distorted reflections of reality. And as we're about to see, when these tricks of deception combined with the emerging science of secret codes, espionage entered a whole new realm of sophistication. Long before the age of complex algorithms and digital encryption, ancient spies were already mastering the art of secret communication with codes so clever, they'd remain unbroken for centuries. Take the Spartan citale, a deceptively simple tool that turned an ordinary leather strip into an unreadable puzzle. Wrapped around a rod of specific thickness, the message would appear as gibberish unless the recipient had an identical rod to rewrap it. This wasn't just encryption, it was physical cryptography where the key wasn't a password but a piece of wood. Legend says a Spartan general once sent a citale message to his troops with orders so sensitive that when intercepted, the enemy, lacking the correct rod, saw only nonsense, buying crucial time for the Greeks to reposition their forces. Then there's the cipher that's become synonymous with ancient secrecy, the Caesar shift. While Julius Caesar didn't invent letter substitution, he perfected its use in military dispatches, sliding each letter 3 places down the alphabet so that attack at dawn became DWWDFN. What made this so effective wasn't just the scrambling, it was the ease of decryption for trusted allies. Any soldier handed a cipher wheel could decode it in moments, while enemies without the key would waste precious hours puzzling over what looked like a foreign language. Historical accounts suggest Caesar even used variations of this cipher with different shift values for different officers, creating compartmentalized secrecy that predated modern classified systems by 2,000 years. But some ancient codes went beyond simple letter swaps. The Hebrew Atbash cipher, mentioned in biblical texts like Jeremiah, flipped the alphabet so that the first letter Aleph became the last Tav, the second Bet became the second to last Shin, and so on. This created a mirror image code that transformed sensitive prophecies into opaque texts unless you knew the reflection rule. Meanwhile, in ancient India, spies communicating across kingdoms' borders developed elaborate symbolic languages where flowers, animals, or even the arrangement of spices in a market stall could convey troop numbers or warn of ambushes. A bundle of lotus buds left at a crossroads might signal friendly forces approaching, while a cobra symbol carved near a river crossing could mean danger ahead. What united all these systems was a shared understanding that codes weren't just about hiding information, they were about verifying trust. When a Roman general received a message decrypted with the correct Caesar shift, he didn't just learn its contents, he confirmed the sender was part of his inner circle. A Spartan commander reading a citale message knew immediately if the leather strip had been rewrapped on the wrong rod, exposing potential betrayal. These ancient innovators grasped something we still rely on today. True security lies not just in complexity, but in controlling who holds the key. And as we're about to discover, when these ciphers combined with another brilliant invention, invisible writing, the art of secret communication reached astonishing new heights. Imagine carrying a vital military secret right under your enemy's nose, written in plain sight, yet completely invisible to them. That was the everyday reality for ancient spies who mastered the art of hidden writing. One of their simplest yet most effective tools was invisible ink, concocted from everyday substances that left no trace until activated. The Greeks famously used milk or lemon juice, which dried clear on parchment but darkened when exposed to heat, whether from a candle flame or the warmth of a hand. A seemingly blank letter could suddenly reveal troop movements or assassination plots with just a little fire nearby. There's even a story of a Spartan agent who smuggled a blank scroll past enemy guards, only for his commander to hold it near a torch, watching as the hidden battle plans materialized like magic. But the Chinese took concealment to another level entirely. Their spies wrote messages on ultra-thin silk, which could be crumpled into a tiny ball and hidden in a messenger's mouth or sewn into clothing. If capture seemed imminent, the courier could swallow the silk or dissolve it in water, leaving no evidence behind. Some operatives went even further, etching secrets onto wooden tablets and then coating them with wax to mimic an ordinary writing surface. To an untrained eye, it was just a merchant's inventory list, but scrape away the wax and you'd find the coordinates of a hidden enemy camp or the names of traitors in the imperial court. Then there was steganography, the art of hiding messages in plain sight. Roman spies would embed coded words within harmless-looking love poems or farm ledgers, where every third letter might spell out a secret directive. Persian agents painted landscapes with hidden symbols, a specific arrangement of trees or clouds indicating safe routes through hostile territory. One particularly clever trick involved weaving messages into the patterns of textiles, so a tapestry hanging in a noble's home could secretly map out fortress weak points for invading forces. What made these methods so brilliant was their dual purpose, not just concealing information, but ensuring its destruction if compromised. A milk-written message could be erased by overheating it until it charred away. A silk note would vanish with a splash of water. Even wax-covered tablets could be melted down completely, leaving no trace. These weren't just tricks, they were fail-safes designed to protect both the message and the messenger. And as spies stretched their networks across continents, they faced an even greater challenge: how to move secrets across vast distances without losing them to bandits, rival agents, or the sheer unpredictability of ancient travel. The solutions they devised would turn ordinary objects from shoes to shovels into ingenious tools of the trade. The lifeblood of ancient espionage wasn't just clever codes or disguises, it was the ability to move information faster than rivals could intercept it. In a world without satellites or instant messaging, empires built astonishingly sophisticated relay systems that would put modern logistics to shame. Take Persia's legendary Royal Road, stretching over 2,000 kilometers from Susa to Sardis. Far more than just a trade route, it functioned like an ancient internet highway, with relay stations spaced a day's horseback ride apart. Fresh riders and horses waited at each stop, allowing messages to travel the entire distance in just 7 days, an unparalleled speed for the 5th century BC. Herodotus marveled at how these royal couriers, known as paradasish, could outpace even the changing seasons, declaring, "Neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds." Sound familiar? That ethos still defines postal services today. Rome's Frumentarii took this system a step further, blending logistics with intelligence work. Officially, they were grain supply officers, a perfect cover for moving between military outposts. But behind the sacks of wheat, they carried encrypted tablets detailing troop movements, rebel activity, and even assassination plots. Their dual role gave them access to every corner of the empire, making them the ultimate insider spies. When Emperor Domitian needed to monitor dissent in distant provinces, his Frumentarii didn't just deliver messages, they gathered them, acting as the ancient equivalent of field agents and data couriers rolled into one. Meanwhile, high in the Andes, the Inca engineered a messenger network that defied geography. Chasqui runners, trained from childhood for endurance, sprinted between Tambo's way stations along the empire's vast road system. Carrying quipus-knotted cords encoding everything from census data to military orders, they could relay a message over 200 kilometers in a single day. The system was so efficient that when Spanish conquistadors arrived, they mistook the Chasquis for supernatural beings, unable to comprehend how news of their landing reached the Inca emperor before they'd even advanced inland. But not all ancient messengers were human. Pigeons, selectively bred for homing instincts, carried tiny scrolls across enemy lines. The Egyptians even used trained dogs to slip through siege camps with hollow collars containing battle plans. And let's not forget smoke signals, not just simple beacons, but complex visual codes used by Native American tribes and Chinese sentries to transmit prearranged warnings across mountain ranges. What tied these systems together was an unspoken rule of espionage. Speed meant nothing without security. Persian riders memorized messages to avoid carrying incriminating documents. Inca quipus required specialized knowledge to interpret. Roman Frumentarii often spoke in oblique metaphors when stopped by suspicious officials. The greatest couriers weren't just fast, they were walking encryption devices, ensuring that even if intercepted, their cargo remained useless to the enemy. And as these networks grew more sophisticated, they opened the door for history's most unexpected spies women, who moved through the shadows of ancient society with a unique advantage, being constantly overlooked. In the shadows of ancient history, where women were often dismissed as mere bystanders, some of the most effective spies thrived precisely because no one saw them coming. Take Delilah, whose name still echoes as a masterclass in deception. While the biblical story focuses on her betrayal of Samson, the real lesson lies in how she weaponized intimacy using pillow talk to extract the secret of his strength before delivering him to the Philistines. This wasn't just personal vengeance, it was espionage sanctioned by rulers who knew a woman's access to private moments could yield what armies could not. Rome's elite learned this lesson well. Volumnia Cytheris, a famed courtesan, moved effortlessly between the beds and banquet halls of senators. Her charm disarming men who'd never suspect the woman pouring their wine was memorizing their battle plans. What made her and others like her so dangerous wasn't just their beauty, but their invisibility in a society that viewed women as political non-entities. A senator might guard his words around rivals, but around a courtesan, he'd boast freely, unaware his pillow partner was relaying every detail to rival factions. Meanwhile, in China's imperial courts, concubines played a deadlier game. Positioned as ornaments of power, they became conduits of information between warring factions. One Tang dynasty account describes a concubine who hid tiny silk scrolls in her hair ornaments, passing troop movements to her clan's allies during seemingly innocent musical performances. Her greatest asset, the assumption that a woman plucking a peeper couldn't possibly be orchestrating a rebellion, but not all female spies relied on seduction. Rahab, the Canaanite innkeeper, turned her hospitality into a tactical advantage. When Israelite scouts needed shelter in Jericho, she hid them beneath flax on her roof, not out of loyalty, but because she recognized which side would win. Her story reveals a crucial truth. Ancient women often wielded influence through domestic spaces men overlooked. A tavern, a weaving room, or a kitchen could become intelligence hubs where secrets were traded as casually as bread. These women didn't just break rules, they exploited the very stereotypes meant to confine them. In societies where men dismissed them as gossips or temptresses, they weaponized those labels, gathering intelligence in plain sight. Their legacy challenges the notion that espionage was a masculine realm, proof that sometimes the most powerful spy isn't the one brandishing a dagger, but the one everyone forgets to watch. And as we'll see, when these shadow games intersected with the divine, spies gained something even more potent than stealth, the unshakable authority of the gods themselves. In the sacred halls of temples and the smoky chambers of oracles, espionage found an unlikely ally religion. Across the ancient world, holy sites functioned as perfect covers for intelligence operations, their sanctity offering protection from prying eyes. The Oracle of Delphi, revered for her divine prophecies, may have been history's most influential spy. Greek city-states lavished her temple with gifts, but some historians suggest her cryptic pronouncements carried more than spiritual guidance. They held coded messages for allied factions. A phrase like "the wolf will triumph over the lion" might sound mystical, but to initiated ears, it could signal an impending Spartan attack on Athens. The line between divine inspiration and political manipulation blurred so completely that rulers dared not ignore her words, whether they came from the gods or a well-connected priestess. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem during the Maccabean revolt, Jewish resistance fighters turned religious observance into tactical genius. Under the noses of Seleucid occupiers, they used pilgrimages and festivals to mask their movements. Crowds gathering for Passover weren't just worshippers, they were couriers smuggling weapons in bread baskets or whispering troop deployments during prayer. The very rituals meant to unify their faith became a clandestine network, proving that devotion could be as sharp as any dagger when survival was at stake. Egypt's temples took this fusion of faith and espionage to bureaucratic heights. Priests at Thebes kept meticulous records of foreign dignitaries visiting under the guise of religious pilgrimage, noting their questions about trade routes or military defenses. These weren't just guest logs, they were intelligence dossiers, later cross-referenced with reports from merchant spies along the Nile. One surviving papyrus reveals how a Hittite envoy's casual remark about his king's illness, made while offering tribute to Ammon, gave Egypt the confidence to delay a costly war. Then there were the mystery cults, like the followers of Mithras or Cybele, whose secretive initiation rites provided ideal recruitment grounds for spies. A Roman senator might dismiss a cult gathering as superstitious folly, never suspecting that behind closed doors, initiates were exchanging maps of legion deployments or forging alliances with disgruntled generals. The cult of Isis, spreading from Egypt to Rome's slums, became particularly notorious. Its network of temples functioned as early, safe houses, where agents could blend into crowds of worshippers while passing messages hidden in amulets or sacrificial offerings. What made religious espionage so potent was its built-in credibility. A priest's warning carried the weight of divine authority. An oracle's riddle could justify any action. Even the architecture of sacred spaces aided deception. Temple labyrinths hid listening posts, while echoing chambers amplified whispers between conspirators. Faith didn't just motivate these spies, it armed them with something rare in the shadowy world of intelligence: unquestioning trust. And as empires expanded, another conduit for secrets emerged, one that moved not through holy sites, but along the bustling trade routes where wealth and information flowed together. The Silk Road stretched like a nervous system across continents, pulsing not just with silks and spices, but with secrets. Merchants haggling over bolts of fabric in Samarkand's markets weren't merely traders, they were living databases, memorizing the locations of new fortresses along the Taklamakan Desert or counting the number of armed guards at Caspian seaports. Chinese silk, prized for its beauty, became an unlikely medium for espionage when weavers began embedding strategic maps into patterns. To the untrained eye, it was just an intricate floral design, but follow the thread, and you'd find hidden mountain passes or the weak points in a city's walls. One surviving Tang Dynasty record describes how a delegation gifted such a tapestry to a Turkic Khan, who proudly displayed it in his throne room, unaware his enemies were studying its woven battle plans. Persian caravans perfected more literal methods of concealment. A seemingly ordinary ceramic jug might have a false bottom containing a scrap of parchment listing rebel sympathizers in a Mesopotamian city. Spices weren't just commodities, they were camouflage. Saffron's pungent aroma masked the scent of ink on hidden messages, while bundles of cinnamon sticks could be hollowed out to hold tiny scrolls. There's even an account of a Roman customs inspector who nearly missed a critical intelligence coup because he dismissed a spoiled shipment of dates, not realizing their pits had been carefully removed and replaced with wax capsules containing troop movements. But the true masters of Silk Road espionage were the nomadic Scythians, who played all sides with ruthless pragmatism. Their horsemen knew every oasis and avalanche-prone pass from the Black Sea to the Tarim Basin, selling safe passage to caravans, and selling information about those same caravans to bandits or rival empires. Greek historians wrote of Scythian scouts who could track a merchant's progress across the steppe simply by noting which campfires had been recently extinguished, then racing ahead to alert waiting ambushers. To kingdoms craving intelligence, these nomads were indispensable and utterly unreliable. A Scythian guide might lead a Chinese envoy safely through the Pamirs one season, then sell his route to Xiongnu raiders the next. This swirling nexus of commerce and covert ops created history's first truly global intelligence web. A rumor overheard in a Palmyra tavern could reach Persian ears within weeks, reshaping military strategies thousands of miles away. A Byzantine spy posing as a wine merchant might bribe a Sogdian translator to reveal what was really said during a private audience between Turkic and Chinese officials. The Silk Road proved a timeless truth: wherever wealth flows, secrets follow. And as these shadow networks grew more sophisticated, they paved the way for espionage's darkest art: the silent elimination of threats before they could even take shape. The dagger slid between the ribs before the victim even noticed the stranger in the crowd, a signature move of the Sicarii, Jewish rebels who turned assassination into political theater. Concealing their small blades beneath cloaks, these zealots would mingle in Jerusalem's bustling markets or temple courtyards, striking Roman collaborators with terrifying efficiency. But their true weapon wasn't steel, it was fear. By vanishing into the panicked crowd after each killing, they created an atmosphere of paranoia where no official felt safe. Historian Josephus described how some targets would collapse at the mere sight of a suspicious figure approaching, their minds already defeated by the sicari's psychological warfare. Rome answered shadow with shadow. Emperors like Tiberius and Nero maintained networks of professional poisoners, their recipes refined in palace basements. Locusta, Nero's infamous toxica, became so skilled that she could calibrate doses to mimic natural illnesses, a slow fever here, a sudden cramp there. When Britannicus, Nero's rival for the throne, dropped dead at a banquet, his convulsions were blamed on epilepsy. Only years later did whispers reveal the truth. A taster's goblet had been accidentally dipped in hot water to neutralize the poison, while Britannicus's cup held a lethal extract of nightshade. This was the dark art of plausible deniability, where murder wore the mask of misfortune. Meanwhile, Greek city-states waged silent war on the high seas. Spies disguised as dockworkers would slip into enemy harbors, severing anchor ropes under cover of darkness. Without those crucial lines, warships would drift into collisions during storms or be dashed against rocks. Others tampered with water barrels, adding seawater to induce thirst or even contaminating supplies with purgatives to weaken crews before battle. One account from the Peloponnesian War tells of an entire Athenian fleet rendered helpless by dysentery after drinking from fresh springs that Spartan agents had secretly fouled. But perhaps the most chilling saboteurs were the ones who never lifted a blade. Persian spies spreading rumors of cursed battlefields could make entire regiments refuse to march. Egyptian operatives bribed scribes to alter star charts, ensuring enemy navigators sailed into reefs. These weren't just acts of violence, they were psychological operations designed to erode trust in leaders, equipment, and even the gods themselves. When a Roman legion found their sacred standards mysteriously defaced before combat, many saw it as an omen of defeat, exactly as some unseen hand intended. What united these shadow warriors across civilizations was their understanding of disproportionate impact. A single well-placed knife or tainted water cask could achieve what armies might fail to accomplish through brute force. Their legacy endures in modern asymmetrical warfare, proving that sometimes the quietest methods leave the loudest echoes in history. And as we'll discover next, the making of such operatives wasn't left to chance. It required training so rigorous, it reshaped minds as sharply as daggers reshaped fates. Becoming an ancient spy wasn't about stumbling into the role. It was a grueling transformation, sculpting ordinary individuals into masters of deception. In China's Warring States period, recruits endured years of training that would rival modern intelligence academies. They didn't just learn languages, they mastered dialects down to regional accents, allowing them to pose as fishermen from Kai or merchants from Chu without raising suspicion. One surviving military manual details how trainees spent months perfecting the art of blending in, practicing limps to mimic war injuries or adopting the calloused hands of a farmer. The most promising were schooled in 9 transformations, a curriculum covering everything from forging documents to reading celestial omens for navigation. Their final test, infiltrating a mock enemy camp where failure meant not just expulsion but sometimes execution, a stark reminder that secrecy was lethal, serious business. Rome took a different approach, preferring experienced soldiers who already knew the battlefield's brutal truths. Legionnaires with sharp minds and proven loyalty were tapped to join the frumentarii, their military discipline making them ideal for covert logistics. But combat skills alone weren't enough. These recruits underwent intense memory training, learning to replicate entire conversations verbatim after hearing them just once. Some practiced the loci method, associating facts with imaginary locations in a mental palace, a technique still used by memory champions today. The poet Juvenal even mocked their acting skills, noting how a frumentarius could weep on command when swearing false oaths. Yet not all spies volunteered. Blackmail was the dark underbelly of recruitment. A Persian satrap with gambling debts might find his IOUs mysteriously forgiven, provided he shared palace gossip. A Greek merchant caught smuggling could avoid execution by becoming an informant, his crimes held over him like a dagger. The most effective coercion, however, preyed on ambition. Ambitious scribes in Egypt were promised royal patronage if they documented their superiors' disloyal comments. Broken promises were deadly. One Assyrian tablet warns of a spy who betrayed his handlers, only to have his family sold into slavery as retribution. Loyalty wasn't assumed, it was tested relentlessly. Han Dynasty operatives faced staged interrogations where captors threatened their fictive families to gauge emotional control. Roman trainees were sent on fake missions designed to lure them into betrayals, with those resisting temptation rewarded with higher risk assignments. The Byzantines took paranoia further, employing double agents to monitor their own spies, a practice so pervasive that Emperor Justinian's chief spymaster reportedly said, "I trust no one except the man I've blackmailed twice." Physical endurance separated survivors from casualties. Persian recruits ran desert routes without water to simulate escape scenarios. Celtic scouts slept in freezing bogs to harden themselves for winter campaigns. But the ultimate test was psychological, maintaining a false identity for years. Accounts speak of Qin dynasty agents who married into enemy noble families, raising children while secretly mapping fortress layouts on silk scraps hidden in their hairpins. Their success hinged on a terrifying truth: the best spies didn't just pretend to be someone else, they became them. This razor's edge between deception and reality made ancient spycraft as much an art as a science. And as networks grew more sophisticated, so did the methods to dismantle them, ushering in an equally intricate world of counterintelligence, where every trick of the spy became a weapon against them. For every brilliant spy slipping through palace gates, there stood an equally cunning counter-spy waiting to catch them, because ancient rulers understood that intelligence flowed both ways. The Egyptians developed one of history's first forensic techniques to detect tampering. Their sealers mixed clay impressions with unique fibers or crushed gemstones, so any broken seal would reveal invisible cracks. A scroll from Ramses III's reign shows how a vizier's seal, supposedly intact, betrayed microscopic flecks of blue frit, proving someone had steamed it open and resealed it with counterfeit clay. The punishment: the spies' hands were dipped in molten wax, creating a grotesque seal of their own. Rome institutionalized counterintelligence with brutal efficiency. Captured enemy agents faced the questions interrogation sessions where hooks and hot irons extracted confessions. But the real genius lay in turning those broken spies into double agents. A Celtic scout caught mapping Roman forts might suddenly find his family held hostage in comfortable villas, incentivizing him to feed false layouts back to his tribe. Tacitus recounts how one such double agent led a Germanic war band straight into a legionary ambush, proving that the best way to neutralize a spy was to make him yours. Chinese dynasties relied on psychological warfare against infiltrators. During the Tang era, palace guards rotated complex call and response passwords not just daily, but hourly. Phrases like "the phoenix preens at dawn" might shift to "the tiger drinks moonlight by noon." Any hesitation or incorrect tone could reveal an imposter. One general even staged fake midnight attacks on his own camp, watching to see which sentries reacted too slowly or too quickly. The unlucky ones disappeared before sunrise. Persian kings played a subtler game, planting false troop movements in scrolls left carelessly near suspected traitors. When those numbers appeared in enemy dispatches, the mole's fate was sealed. A chilling account from Persepolis describes how a royal cupbearer was caught after secret plans for a famine relief caravan he'd leaked were ambushed not by bandits, but by the king's own immortals waiting to identify who'd betrayed the route. These cat-and-mouse games reached their peak in Byzantium, where Emperor Justinian's spymaster Marcellus invented honey traps centuries before the term existed. Suspects would accidentally overhear whispered plans in bathhouses or find abandoned love letters hinting at affairs with foreign diplomats. Those who took the bait found themselves facing not scandal but execution. The lesson was clear. In the shadow war between spies and their hunters, trust was the rarest commodity of all. And as covert operations grew more sophisticated, they began reshaping not just battles, but the very treaties that ended them. When ancient envoys rode into foreign courts with gifts and flowery speeches, their true mission often lay hidden beneath ceremonial robes. These weren't just diplomats, they were intelligence operatives, trained to read a king's weaknesses in the tremor of his hands or the hesitation before a toast. Take Themistocles, the Athenian statesman who visited Sparta under the guise of alliance talks. While his hosts debated peace terms, he memorized the layout of their city walls, noting where the mortar had crumbled, intelligence that would later help Athens outmaneuver Sparta in battle. Such dual roles weren't exceptions, they were standard practice. A Hittite ambassador's staff might bear ornate carvings, but inside its hollow core lay cuneiform tablets listing which minor kings could be bribed or which rival's daughter might make a strategic bride. The most delicate negotiations hinged on layers of deception. When Egypt's Ramses II sat down with Hittite envoys after years of war, the treaty they etched into silver tablets proclaimed eternal friendship. Yet buried in its ornate phrasing were secret clauses unwritten but understood, allowing Egyptian spies to operate in Hittite ports as merchants. This shadow diplomacy extended even to gifts. The famed gold chariot sent to Pharaoh wasn't just a peace offering but a test. By examining its craftsmanship, Egyptian engineers could gauge the Hittites' metalworking skills, and by extension, their weapons technology. China's warring states period turned peace talks into psychological chess matches. Envoys like Su Qin mastered the art of double persuasion, pledging loyalty to multiple courts while secretly working for none. They'd broker treaties with deliberately vague terms, then watch which rulers scrambled to reinterpret them, revealing who was desperate or deceitful. One Kai strategist even staged banquets where envoys were plied with wine until their loose tongues exposed their master's true intentions. These weren't just social gaffes, they were intelligence gold mines. But the ultimate diplomatic spies might have been Rome's legati, whose very presence could unravel alliances. Before crossing into enemy territory, they'd dispatch servants ahead ostensibly to arrange lodgings, but really to bribe local officials for gossip. During negotiations, a legatus might casually admire a king's jewelry, subtly assessing his treasury's wealth. And when talks concluded, their detailed reports didn't just record agreements, they catalogued every twitch and hesitation, providing Rome's Senate with psychological profiles to exploit later. This blurring of diplomacy and espionage reveals a timeless truth. In the ancient world, trust was often just another weapon. A treaty's glittering surface might promise peace, while its invisible ink spelled betrayal. And as we'll soon discover, when these real-world intrigues intertwined with the realm of gods and monsters, spies gained something even more potent than secrecy: the power of myth itself. Mythology and legend often served as ancient society's mirror, reflecting the very real fears and fascinations surrounding spies and deception. Among the gods, none embodied this duality better than Hermes, the Greek trickster who moved effortlessly between Olympus and the mortal world. With his winged sandals and cunning wit, he wasn't just a messenger, he was the divine patron of thieves, liars, and, by extension, spies. His mythic exploits, like stealing Apollo's cattle by walking them backward to confuse their tracks, weren't just whimsical tales. They were allegories for the art of misdirection, teaching listeners that sometimes the straightest path to victory was a carefully laid false trail. The Norse had Loki, a shape-shifter whose deceptions toppled kingdoms and sparked wars. When he orchestrated the death of the beloved god Balder by exploiting mistletoe's unassuming nature, it wasn't just mischief, it was a masterclass in intelligence gathering. Loki knew Balder's invulnerability had one weakness because he'd listened, asked the right questions, and played on others' trust. Sound familiar? These myths codified a harsh truth: even the mightiest could fall to a spy who understood human nature. Biblical narratives, too, blurred the line between sacred history and spycraft. Joseph's brothers, posing as simple shepherds to scout Egypt's grain supplies, mirrored real-world reconnaissance missions. But the story's deeper lesson lay in Joseph's counterintelligence move, planting a silver cup in Benjamin's sack to test his family's loyalty. Here, the line between parable and practical espionage vanished entirely, revealing how ancient audiences saw divine will and human cunning as intertwined forces. Even folklore outside Europe teemed with covert operatives. The Hindu epic Mahabharata featured Shakuni, a master strategist who used loaded dice to manipulate a kingdom into ruin, a metaphor for how information, like gambling, could be rigged in advance. West African tales celebrated Anansi the spider, whose webs of deceit ensnared far stronger foes, proving that brains trumped brawn. These stories weren't mere entertainment. They were survival manuals disguised as fables, teaching listeners to spot lies, guard secrets, and suspect the too convenient offer. What united these mythological spies was their role as cultural cautionary tales. Hermes' adventures warned against blind trust in messengers. Loki's betrayals revealed the cost of underestimating the unassuming. Joseph's saga showcased how espionage could birth both tragedy and redemption. Through them, ancient societies grappled with a dilemma we still face today. How much deception is necessary, and when does it corrupt the deceiver? As we turn from myth to modernity, we'll see how these age-old questions haunt even our sleekest spy gadgets, because while technology evolves, the human heart behind the secrets remains unchanged. The tools may have evolved, but the game remains eerily familiar. Take invisible ink where ancient spies used milk or lemon juice. Modern agents now rely on steganography software that hides messages in digital photos or audio files. Yet the core principle is identical: conceal information in plain sight. A Roman spy scribbling between the lines of a shopping list would instantly understand a 21st century operative embedding data in a cat meme. Even the Caesar cipher, that simple letter-shifting trick from Antiquity, lives on in modern encryption algorithms, just with a few million extra mathematical layers for complexity. Disguises have upgraded from shepherd's cloaks to deepfake technology, but the psychology behind them hasn't budged. Sun Tzu's advice about appearing weak when strong resonates in today's cyber warfare, where hackers pose as bumbling amateurs to lure defenders into complacency. And just as Delilah used intimacy to extract Samson's secrets, modern honey traps still exploit human vulnerabilities only now. A flirtatious DM might precede the breach of a government server. The real seismic shift, the collapse of time, where Persian royal couriers needed days to relay battlefield updates, today's satellites beam real-time troop movements to handheld devices. Ancient spies risked their lives smuggling silk maps. Now, drones capture the same terrain in high definition. But here's the twist: while technology accelerates, human nature lags stubbornly behind. The same instincts that made a Babylonian merchant spill secrets over wine make phishing emails shockingly effective millennia later. Perhaps the most telling parallel lies in the enduring power of misinformation. The fake prophecies spread by Chinese agents to destabilize enemies find their echo in today's social media bots amplifying divisive narratives. When Roman generals planted false battle plans, they were pioneering what modern intelligence agencies call perception management, the art of controlling what your enemy believes. Yet amid all these parallels, one ancient innovation remains unmatched: the sheer audacity of pre-digital spies. Without satellites or wiretaps, they relied on ingenuity so bold it feels mythical. Like the Spartan who allegedly smuggled a warning message inside a live hare's stomach, or the Byzantine agent who encoded intelligence in the stitches of an embroidered handkerchief. Their legacy whispers a timeless truth: no matter how advanced the tools, espionage will always be a human drama of wit against vigilance, trust against betrayal. And as we're about to see, some of history's most legendary spies didn't just play this game, they rewrote its rules entirely. Zhu Zhiliang's name still sends shivers down the spines of military historians, not for his battlefield prowess, but for his psychological warfare. During China's Three Kingdoms period, this master strategist turned empty city gates into weapons. When vastly outnumbered by Wei forces, he ordered the gates of Zicheng left wide open, with sweepers casually tidying the streets. From the walls, he played a tranquil lute melody as if without a care. General Sima Yi, suspecting an ambush, retreated immediately. This empty fort strategy wasn't just a bluff, it preyed on the enemy's knowledge of Zhu Zhiliang's reputation for cunning. The lesson: sometimes the most powerful intelligence operation is letting your legend do the work. Rome had its own spymaster in Cicero, whose speeches against Catiline's conspiracy revealed an intricate web of informants. While scholars remember his oratory, they often overlook his spy network: slaves positioned in taverns to collect drunk nobles' loose talk, scribes paid to copy suspicious correspondence, even gladiators reporting on underground meetings. His most brilliant move, using a fake defector to feed Catiline false plans, then ambushing the rebels when they acted on the misinformation. Centuries before modern counterintelligence, Cicero proved that controlling what your enemy believes can be more decisive than swords. Then there's Rahab of Jericho, the unlikely heroine whose story twists expectations. As a Canaanite woman running an inn by the city walls, she was perfectly positioned to observe comings and goings. When Joshua's spies arrived, she didn't just hide them, she negotiated. Her demand for protection in exchange for intelligence wasn't mere survival, it was strategic foresight. By revealing Jericho's weakening morale and pinpointing the most vulnerable wall section, she didn't just aid Israel, she secured her family's place in history. What made these figures extraordinary wasn't just their methods, but their understanding of human weakness. Zhu Zhiliang exploited pride, Cicero manipulated paranoia, Rahab leveraged desperation. Their legacies endure because they grasped a timeless truth. Wars may be fought with armies, but they are often won in the shadows. Now, as archaeologists brush dust from ancient tablets and shards, these legendary spies' techniques are stepping from myth into hard evidence, one crumbling parchment at a time. Archaeologists digging through the dust of history keep stumbling upon proof that ancient spies were far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. Take those mysterious tunnels snaking beneath castles from Scotland to Syria. Long dismissed as sewage channels or escape routes, they're now recognized as covert highways for spies. In Cappadocia, Turkey, researchers mapped a labyrinth of underground passages connecting military outposts, some barely wide enough for a single person to squeeze through sideways. These weren't just hidden paths, they were soundproofed with layers of sheep's wool to muffle footsteps, proving that stealth was engineered into the very architecture of war. Then there are the clay tablets that first looked like mundane tax records until someone noticed the odd spacing between symbols. Using multispectral imaging, scholars at the University of Chicago discovered faint secondary messages scraped into the clay before baking, then covered with an innocent-looking surface text. One such tablet from Mari, an ancient Mesopotamian city, appeared to list grain shipments but secretly detailed which officials could be bribed with said grain. It's the ancient equivalent of a modern encrypted email hiding in plain sight as a shopping list. Persepolis, the glittering capital of the Persian Empire, yielded an even more telling find. A network of way stations precisely spaced a day's horseback ride apart. By matching these ruins with Herodotus' descriptions of the royal road, archaeologists confirmed the existence of history's first organized postal spy system. But the real smoking gun, stables designed with separate entrances and exits so fresh couriers could depart without even dismounting, shaving critical minutes off message delivery times. This wasn't just mail, it was carefully calculated intelligence logistics. Perhaps no discovery silenced skeptics like the bronze citale rods unearthed near Sparta. For centuries, historians debated whether these encryption tools were real or just legend. Then in 2014, a team digging near the ruins of Therapne found two matching rods alongside a leather strip still bearing the faint indentations of a message. The text itself had long since rotted away, but the artifact's existence proved Plutarch's accounts correct. Spartan generals really did send battlefield orders that could only be read when wrapped around a specific stick. Even everyday objects are revealing their secrets. A seemingly ordinary comb found in a 1st century Judean cave turned out to have microscopic lettering along its teeth when examined under magnification. Scholars believe it held a list of Roman patrol schedules, a spy's crib sheet disguised as a grooming tool. From hollowed-out sandals containing papyrus maps to oil lamps with hidden compartments for poison, each artifact whispers the same truth. Espionage wasn't some rare, dramatic exception in the ancient world. It was woven into the fabric of daily life, as commonplace as bread and far more dangerous. As these physical remnants emerge from the earth, they're reshaping our understanding of ancient literature too. Those cryptic passages in Homer about messengers who walk unseen suddenly read less like poetry and more like tradecraft manuals. Plato's dialogues on truth and deception take on new layers when you imagine them being debated in a world where every second philosopher might have been someone's informant. The line between myth and reality blurs with each archaeological season because sometimes the most fantastical spy stories turn out to have been true all along. Sun Tzu's The Art of War didn't just outline battlefield tactics, it codified espionage as a science. His chapter on spies remains one of history's earliest intelligence manuals, categorizing operatives into 5 types, from expendable double agents to deep cover sleepers. But what's striking isn't just the sophistication of his system, it's how bluntly he dismisses commanders who neglect spycraft, relying on guesswork instead of intelligence. He wrote, "That's like drowning a whole army to put out a campfire. This wasn't philosophy, it was practical doctrine. Chinese generals reportedly tested recruits by having them steal tokens from guarded tents, rewarding those who returned unseen with promotions to elite scout units. Across the Himalayas, Kautilya's Arthashastra took spycraft even further. This 4th century BCE Indian treatise reads like a Machiavellian playbook crossed with a spy academy curriculum. It prescribed everything from poisoning enemy wells to recruiting agents from orphanages' children who'd grow up with no loyalties except to the state. One passage details how spies should pose as astrologers, using cold reading techniques to extract secrets from superstitious nobles. Another recommends embedding operatives as cooks in rival courts, where they'd slip truth serum herbs into royal meals before discreetly recording drunken confessions. The text's chilling pragmatism reveals a truth about ancient statecraft. Espionage wasn't just a tool of war, but the glue holding empires together. Greek theater, surprisingly, became an unexpected archive of spy techniques. Aeschylus, the Persians, dramatized real intelligence failures preceding the Battle of Salamis, how Xerxes' scouts misread Greek ship movements, or how Athenian spies spread false rumors of internal discord. These plays weren't mere entertainment, they were cautionary tales for citizens who might someday serve as wartime informants. Even comedies like Aristophanes' Lysistrata hid serious lessons, with its plot about women intercepting military dispatches proving that ancient writers understood information control could come from unexpected quarters. Roman historians like Tacitus and Suetonius treated covert operations as worthy of meticulous documentation. Tacitus' account of Boudicca's rebellion notes how Roman spies infiltrated British tribes by mastering local dialects and tribal tattoos. Suetonius recorded how Emperor Claudius kept a personal cipher wheel for decoding messages from his frumentarii agents. These weren't just anecdotes, they were case studies for future leaders. When Julius Caesar wrote his commentaries, he conspicuously omitted his spy network's contributions, a deception that fooled enemies into underestimating his intelligence apparatus for generations. But perhaps the most revealing texts are the ones that weren't meant to survive. A recently deciphered Egyptian papyrus from the reign of Thutmose III contains a scribe's frantic note about intercepted Hittite messages written in hollowed-out figurines. A broken Assyrian tablet lists payments to the woman who listens at the tavern walls. These fragile records, never intended for posterity, expose the grinding daily labor behind ancient intelligence. The bribes, the dead drops, the thousand small betrayals that kept kingdoms running. Literature did more than preserve these techniques, it democratized them. Where oral traditions kept spycraft confined to elite circles, written manuals allowed knowledge to spread across centuries and continents. A Han Dynasty strategist could study Sun Tzu just as easily as a Byzantine general consulted Roman field manuals. This cross-pollination of ideas created an unbroken chain of tradecraft stretching from Bronze Age scouts to Renaissance cryptographers. And as we'll see next, these high-stakes games of shadows weren't just for kings and generals, they reached deep into the lives of ordinary people, turning farmers into informants and marketplaces into intelligence hubs. In the bustling marketplace of an ancient city, every pair of eyes could belong to an informant. That baker kneading dough might be noting which customers asked about grain shipments. The potter shaping clay could be listening for whispers about troop movements. Spies didn't just move through high palaces and military camps. They thrived in the spaces where ordinary people lived and worked, turning daily routines into inadvertent intelligence networks. Take the humble Roman taberna, those roadside inns dotting trade routes. Innkeepers weren't just pouring wine. They were unofficial border guards required by law to record travelers' names and destinations. A seemingly casual question about road conditions could end up in a magistrate's report if the innkeeper suspected something amiss. Farmers played an equally unwitting role in this shadow network. In Egypt's Nile Delta, agricultural workers received extra rations for reporting strangers cutting through irrigation canals, potential spies mapping invasion routes. Chinese border villages during the Han Dynasty had a darker arrangement. Families were held collectively responsible for harboring unauthorized visitors, incentivizing neighbors to watch each other with suspicion. Even children became assets. Persian road guards allegedly paid shepherds' sons to count passing soldiers while tending flocks. The psychological toll was profound. A Greek comedy by Menander jokes about husbands checking rooftops for eavesdroppers before criticizing the government, but the laughter rang hollow in reality. Babylonian letters reveal families avoiding political talk at meals, fearing enslaved servants might trade gossip for freedom. Roman graffiti from Pompeii warns, "The walls have ears," a chilling reminder that privacy was an illusion when any conversation could be currency. Merchants faced the tightrope walk. Their caravans needed safe passage through rival territories, making them ideal rumor collectors, but also prime suspects. Assyrian records describe traders carrying two sets of ledgers, one for customs inspectors, another for their true contacts. Some developed ingenious signaling systems. Phoenician sailors reportedly hung colored sails to alert allies about naval blockades, disguising military intelligence as mundane harbor activity. What's striking is how these systems normalized surveillance. Just as modern apps harvest data from unsuspecting users, ancient societies baked espionage into everyday transactions. The Athenian silver mines paid informants in the very currency they minted. Persian kings rewarded vigilant shepherds with tax exemptions, effectively turning pastoralians into early warning grids. This created societies where trust was both precious and perilous, where the milk seller might be a patriot or a provocateur, and the difference could hinge on which side paid more that month. Yet attitudes toward spies were far from uniform. While Roman law punished captured foreign agents with crucifixion, it celebrated citizen informants as civic heroes. Jewish texts debated whether Rahab's betrayal of Jericho was righteous or reprehensible, and in India's Mahabharata, the noble Yudhishthira justifies lying during war, declaring deceit a virtue when protecting Dharma. These contradictions reveal a timeless tension. Societies despised spies until they needed them, then struggled to reconcile their usefulness with their methods. The moral compass of ancient espionage spun wildly depending on who held it. In China's Warring States period, master spies like Sun Tzu's, local spies, informants recruited from enemy territories were celebrated as strategic geniuses. Their portraits adorned military manuals alongside famous generals, their covert work considered no less vital than battlefield heroics. One Han Dynasty text even compares a well-placed spy to a surgeon's needle, able to resolve conflicts with precision where brute force would only cause collateral damage. Yet this reverence came with strings attached. Captured Chinese operatives faced gruesome executions, their bodies displayed as warnings. The message was clear: spying was honorable when successful, treasonous when exposed. Contrast this with ancient Greece, where the word kataskopos, spy, carried a whiff of disgrace. Herodotus recounts how Spartan scouts caught near Persian camps were summarily executed not by the enemy, but by their own commanders, not for failure, but for the dishonor of being caught. The Greeks admired open combat, viewing deception as unworthy of true warriors. Even Odysseus, despite his famed cunning, faced criticism in Homer's epics for tactics that later generations would call espionage. Yet hypocrisy lurked beneath this idealism. City-states like Athens maintained robust networks of slave informants, their dirty work allowing citizens to keep their hands metaphorically clean. Rome's duality was even starker. Captured enemy spies faced crucifixion or being thrown to beasts in the arena, punishments designed to terrify. Yet the same emperors who publicly condemned espionage relied on the frumentarii, their imperial courier spies. Legal scholar Ulpian's writings reveal the twisted logic. Roman spies were protectors of the state, while foreign agents were enemies of civilization. This double standard reached absurd heights under Emperor Tiberius, who executed a man for reading a spy's intercepted letter while reading his subjects' private correspondence daily through his intelligence network. Religious texts amplified this moral murkiness. The Bible's Rahab is hailed as righteous for betraying Jericho to Israelite spies, yet Delilah is damned for doing the same to Samson. Hindu epics like the Mahabharata glorify Krishna's battlefield deceptions as divinely sanctioned, while Islamic hadiths warn that the liar's punishment is the fire. These contradictions expose a universal tension. Societies revered spies when they served divine or national interests, but vilified them when they switched allegiance. Perhaps the most revealing perspective comes from the margins. Babylonian marriage contracts included clauses forbidding wives from acting as family spies, proof that domestic surveillance was rampant enough to require legal deterrence. Celtic bardic traditions sang of spies who infiltrated Roman camps as lovers, their ballads tinged with both admiration and unease. Even children weren't exempt. Spartan boys were encouraged to steal food as training, but punished if caught, a microcosm of their culture's conflicted relationship with deception. What emerges isn't a clear ethical divide, but a kaleidoscope of justifications. Necessity, loyalty, and survival all colored how spies were judged. A Roman senator might decry Egyptian spies while praising his own informants. A Chinese general could honor his spies while executing the enemies. This moral elasticity hints at a truth that still resonates. In the shadows where empires rise and fall, honor often wears the mask of convenience. And as the tools of deception grew more sophisticated, so too did the rationalizations for using them, ushering in an era where the line between cleverness and treachery became as finely crafted as the gadgets spies carried. The evolution of spycraft wasn't just about sharper minds, it was about better tools, each innovation a leap forward in the endless cat and mouse game of secrecy. Consider China's wind and fire signaling towers, a communication network so advanced it could relay messages across 300 kilometers in just hours. These towering structures, spaced at precise intervals along the Great Wall, didn't just send smoke signals. They used coded combinations of colored flags by day and differently sized fires by night to convey everything from troop numbers to invasion routes. A single tower might signal 5,000 cavalry approaching from the north with 2 red flags and a triple flame, while another could warn of poisoned wells with a black banner and rapid smoke puffs. The system was so efficient that during the Han Dynasty, intelligence could travel from the western frontier to the capital faster than a galloping horse, turning geography into an ally rather than an obstacle. Rome answered with ingenuity of its own, embedding spycraft into the very fabric of daily life. Senators' tunics hid specially stitched compartments for wax tablets, while merchants' belts could unscrew to reveal hollow spaces for papyrus scrolls. One particularly clever design involved sandals with soles that peeled apart to stash maps or poisoned needles. But the real masterpiece, the bulla, a child's amulet repurposed by spies to hold tiny, rolled messages. To casual observers, it was just a sentimental trinket, yet beneath its gilt surface lay battle plans or assassination orders. Even dinnerware became deceptive. Archaeologists have uncovered Roman cups with false bottoms, their interiors etched with troop movements visible only when held to the light at a precise angle. Meanwhile, in the deserts of Persia, spies refined the art of concealment through chemistry. They developed inks that vanished after reading, using mixtures of gallnut extract and iron sulfate that faded when exposed to air. Other agents carried sleeping tablets, pills containing concentrated doses of opium or hemlock that could be slipped into a drink or dissolved in a bath. But their most chilling innovation was the Death Scroll, a document coated with toxins like aconite. Unsuspecting readers would lick their fingers to turn the pages, unknowingly ingesting enough poison to kill within hours. These weren't just tools, they were psychological weapons designed to make even the act of intercepting a message deadly. The Greeks contributed their own breakthroughs, particularly in naval espionage. Divers equipped with hollow reeds could stay submerged for hours, eavesdropping on enemy ships anchored offshore. Some operatives used early diving bells made from animal bladders to approach harbors undetected, while others employed underwater grappling hooks to sabotage rudders or cut anchor lines. One account from Syracuse describes how Greek spies embedded iron spikes into coral reefs during the night, turning calm waters into ship-killing traps by dawn. Yet for all their brilliance, these advancements came with a brutal irony. Every new tool made failures more catastrophic. When coded messages were intercepted and cracked, entire armies walked into ambushes. A disguised spy caught with hollowed-out coins could unravel an entire network under torture. The same wind and fire towers that sped communication also created vulnerabilities. Enemies quickly learned to mimic signals, leading battles like the Red Cliffs where false tower messages lured thousands to their deaths. These weren't just setbacks, they were turning points that reshaped empires. The fall of Carthage, for instance, traces partly to Roman spies deciphering Punic naval signals, while Byzantium's loss of Antioch stemmed from a single compromised courier whose hidden compartment was discovered during a routine search. What emerges from this technological arms race is a paradox. The more sophisticated spycraft became, the higher the stakes grew. A world where information moved faster and hid deeper was also one where a single slip could doom nations. As we'll see next, these failures didn't just change battles, they rewrote history itself, proving that in the shadow war of antiquity, progress and peril were two sides of the same coin. Even the most cunning spies of antiquity faced moments when their carefully laid plans unraveled, sometimes with consequences that echoed through history. Take the disastrous Athenian expedition to Syracuse in 415 BCE. Convinced by flawed intelligence that the Sicilian city was ripe for rebellion, Athens sent a massive fleet to invade. But their spies had missed crucial details: Syracuse's strengthened walls, its secret alliance with Sparta, and even the basic geography of the harbor. When Athenian troops found themselves trapped in a foreign land with dwindling supplies, their misadventure became a textbook example of intelligence failure. Thucydides' chilling account describes how Sicilian cavalry picked off retreating Athenian soldiers one by one, their screams carrying across the marshes, all because someone hadn't double-checked the maps. Cleopatra's legendary network of informants couldn't save her from Rome's encroaching shadow. Despite her spies in Octavian's inner circle, they failed to detect his masterstroke, turning her own naval commanders with promises of Roman citizenship. By the time Cleopatra realized her fleet at Actium had been compromised, it was too late. The irony: her ancestors had built Egypt's spy apparatus to perfection, using priestly oracles and merchant networks. But in the end, even the queen who once smuggled herself into Caesar's palace wrapped in a carpet couldn't outmaneuver betrayal from within. Not all failures were tragic, some were downright absurd. Persian spies scouting Greek defenses before Thermopylae were caught because they didn't realize locals measured distances by stades, a unit that varied by city-state. Their report claimed the pass was 3 stades wide, leading Xerxes to send his elite immortals into a bottleneck where Leonidas's 300 Spartans butchered them. Centuries later, Byzantine agents in Venice were exposed because they kept bowing to icons, a dead giveaway in a city where merchants nodded to customers, not saints. The most catastrophic blunders reshaped civilizations. When Mongol scouts underestimated the depth of the Danube's winter ice in 1241, their entire cavalry drowned mid-crossing, halting Europe's invasion. The Maya city of Tikal collapsed after intercepted messages convinced its king his allies were betraying him. They weren't leading him to abandon vital trade pacts. These weren't just mistakes, they were dominoes that toppled empires. Yet amid the ruins of failed missions, a pattern emerges. The greatest danger wasn't ignorance, but overconfidence. Athenian generals dismissed contradictory reports from lower-ranked scouts. Cleopatra trusted her charm to outweigh cold pragmatism. Even the Mongols, masters of reconnaissance, fell prey to assuming rivers would behave as they did on the steppes. Ancient spies may not have had satellites or wiretaps, but their fatal miscalculations feel eerily modern. Because whether in wax tablets or encrypted servers, intelligence is only as good as those willing to question it. Spies didn't just witness the fall of empires, they often held the knives that cut the threads of power. Rome's decline, for instance, wasn't just about barbarian invasions or economic collapse. It was fueled by a cancer within its own intelligence networks. The frumentarii, once celebrated as the empire's eyes and ears, devolved into corrupt enforcers under later emperors. These operatives, who had once relayed vital military dispatches, began fabricating treason charges to extort wealthy citizens. Emperor Commodus's reign became a case study in espionage gone rogue. His spies, more loyal to bribes than Rome, fed him exaggerated plots to justify purges, gutting the empire's leadership until the bureaucracy crumbled under its own paranoia. A single intercepted letter from this era captures the decay, a frumentarius scribbling. The truth matters less than what the emperor wishes to hear. The Mongols, meanwhile, turned espionage into a precursor to conquest. Before their armies even appeared on the horizon, their spies, often disguised as merchants or refugees, would infiltrate target cities, mapping defenses and stoking unrest. In one chilling example ahead of the sack of Baghdad in 1258, Mongol agents spread rumors among the city's Shia minority that the Sunni Caliph planned to disarm them. By the time Hulagu Khan's forces arrived, Baghdad was already fractured by internal riots, its gates mysteriously left unbarred by defecting guards. This wasn't just military strategy, it was psychological warfare, where spies dismantled societies from within before the first arrow flew. Persia's fall to Alexander the Great reveals another fatal flaw: over-reliance on loyalties that didn't exist. King Darius III's court swarmed with informants, but their loyalty crumbled under Macedonian gold. One of history's most consequential intelligence leaks occurred when a Persian satrap, bribed by Alexander, revealed the location of Darius's family at the Battle of Issus. The subsequent capture of the royal family didn't just demoralize Persia's army, it shattered the illusion of imperial invincibility, turning allies into defectors. Even Darius's final assassination was orchestrated by his own cousin, a man Alexander's spies had turned with promises of power. Lesser-known civilizations also succumbed to the spies' sting. The Khmer Empire's sprawling Angkor Wat complex, once impenetrable, fell after Cham spies disguised as monks mapped its hidden aqueducts knowledge used to cut water supplies during siege. In West Africa, the Mali Empire's decline accelerated when Timbuktu's scholars, traditionally neutral, were caught smuggling coded trade routes to Songhai rivals. These stories share a common thread. Empires rarely fell to brute force alone. More often, it was the whispered secrets, the bought loyalties, and the lies swallowed as truth that hollowed them out from within. Yet for every empire undone by spies, others rose through their cunning. As we turn to overlooked spy cultures, from the Arctic's Inuit message runners to the Polynesian navigators who read ocean currents like coded maps, we'll discover how intelligence networks thrived far beyond the palaces and battlefields of the ancient world. Because sometimes the most fascinating spies weren't the ones toppling empires, but those ensuring their people survived in the shadows of giants. While Rome and China dominate spy lore, some of history's most ingenious operatives thrived far from marble palaces and silk roads. In the scorching deserts south of Egypt, the kingdom of Kush trained scouts who could track enemy movements across dunes by reading disturbances in the sand as clearly as a written report. These agents, draped in loose linen to blend with the desert's glare, would bury ostrich eggs filled with water along patrol routes, an ancient version of covert supply caches allowing them to shadow invading forces for weeks without detection. When the Roman Emperor Augustus sent troops into Kushite territory, it was these desert watchers who relayed the legion's every move, enabling Queen Ammonionas to launch devastating guerrilla strikes before vanishing into the arid vastness. Half a world away, Polynesian navigators performed a different kind of reconnaissance not on land, but across thousands of miles of open ocean. Using star paths, wave patterns, and even the flight of birds, they could pinpoint distant islands with uncanny accuracy. But these skills weren't just for exploration, they doubled as naval intelligence. Before launching raids or migrations, Polynesian chiefs dispatched scouts in outrigger canoes to assess rival tribes' strength. The most skilled could estimate a village's population by counting cooking fires from offshore, or gauge defenses by noting the placement of watchtowers along beaches. Their greatest trick, manipulating ocean lore itself, spreading false currents or phantom island sightings to misdirect enemy fleets into treacherous waters. In the dense forests of North America, Native American tribes developed communication systems that rivaled any courier network. The Iroquois Confederacy used patterned smoke signals not just for basic alerts, but to convey complex messages about troop movements or approaching traders. Birch bark scrolls left at trail junctions contained glyphs visible only to initiated members, marking safe routes or ambush points. One particularly clever tactic involved talking leaves, deliberately scattered foliage arranged to indicate the size and direction of passing war parties. To European colonists, these forests seemed trackless and wild, but to indigenous scouts, every bent branch and stacked stone could be as legible as a military dispatch. What's remarkable is how these systems emerged independently across continents, each perfectly adapted to their environment. Kushite desert scouts didn't need invisible ink when the shimmering heat haze concealed their movements. Polynesian navigators required no coded messages when their knowledge of the seas was itself an unbreakable cipher. And for Native American tribes, the land itself became a living map, etched with signs invisible to outsiders. These forgotten spy cultures prove that espionage wasn't the exclusive domain of empires. It was a universal language of survival, spoken in 1,000 ingenious dialects. Their legacy lingers in unexpected places. Modern special forces still study Kushite desert survival techniques. NASA has consulted Polynesian star navigation methods for celestial mapping. Even the term trail marker survives in cybersecurity, where digital breadcrumbs replace physical signs. But perhaps their greatest impact is on the stories we tell, because long before James Bond or Jason Bourne, these real-life shadow warriors were already crafting narratives of cunning, courage, and deception that would echo through centuries of fiction. Hollywood might love dressing spies in sleek black suits, but some of cinema's most thrilling cloak and dagger moments are ripped straight from ancient history, just with a little extra Hollywood flair. Take the infamous This Is Sparta, scene from 300 while Leonidas's kick into the pit is pure fiction. The film nails a deeper truth. Sparta's entire society functioned like a spy state. Their cryptae, young operatives who surveilled the enslaved Helot population, were every bit as ruthless as the movie's portrayal. The difference: real Spartan spies didn't fight shirtless in slow motion. They moved unseen, blending into the shadows to maintain control through fear. Video games like Assassin's Creed take creative liberties with parkering ancient assassins, but they tap into a real historical obsession: the power of stealth. The game's hidden blades echo the Sicarii's daggers, and its sprawling conspiracies mirror Rome's actual fragmentary networks. Even the cinematic Prince of Persia films, for all their magical daggers and time rewinding, capture something authentic: the Persian Empire's reliance on merchant spies who gathered intelligence along the royal road. These stories resonate because they amplify the essence of ancient espionage, the lone operative outthinking overwhelming odds, even if they swap historical accuracy for adrenaline. Literature, too, can't resist Antiquity Spies. Mary Renault's The Praise Singer paints a vivid picture of Greek informants weaving through symposiums, while Stephen Pressfield's Gates of Fire shows Spartan scouts using terrain as a weapon. Even children's books like The Thief by Megan Whalen Turner borrow from history, with protagonists who could have stepped out of Sun Tzu's playbook. What these tales all share is a reverence for the mind games of ancient spycraft, the psychological warfare that often decided fates before swords were drawn. Yet pop culture's greatest service might be how it keeps these ancient techniques alive in our collective imagination. When Game of Thrones' Littlefinger whispers, "Chaos is a ladder," he's channeling the same ruthless pragmatism that guided Byzantine double agents. The poisoned wine tropes in the Borgias, straight from Locusta's playbook. These modern retellings remind us that while technology changes, human nature doesn't. A hacker today might use malware instead of hollowed-out coins, but the goal remains the same: gain advantage so discord survive. The real magic happens when fiction sends viewers down history's rabbit holes. After watching The Eagle, audiences might discover the true story of Rome's lost Ninth Legion, and the spies who likely tracked its disappearance. A God of War player might pause mid-quest to research the real Norse runes used for coded messages. By blending fact with fantasy, these stories become gateways to the past, proving that ancient spies don't just belong to historians. They're cultural touchstones, forever slinking between the pages of our books and the pixels of our screens. The shadowy tactics of ancient spies didn't vanish with crumbling empires. They evolved, embedding themselves into the DNA of modern intelligence operations. Consider the parallels between Rome's fragmentarii and today's cyber operatives. Both blend seamlessly into mundane systems, whether grain supply chains or digital networks, to gather secrets under the guise of routine activity. When the NSA monitors global communications or a hacker infiltrates a foreign power grid, they're executing the same core principle ancient spies mastered: information is power, and the best way to wield it is unseen. Cryptography's lineage stretches back even further. The Caesar cipher's simple letter shifts laid the groundwork for today's end-to-end encryption, where algorithms scramble data into unreadable patterns without the right digital key. The Spartan citale's physical encryption finds its echo in modern hardware security modules, tamper-proof devices that safeguard cryptographic keys. Even steganography, the art of hiding messages in plain sight, thrives in the digital age. Ancient spies used hollowed-out coins or invisible ink. Today, malware hides in JPEG metadata or YouTube videos, proving that the medium changes but the game stays the same. Psychological operations, or psyops, reveal another unbroken thread. Sun Tzu's advice to appear weak when you are strong mirrors modern disinformation campaigns, where nations flood social media with confusion to mask their true intentions. The false prophecies spread by Chinese agents to destabilize enemies now take the form of deepfake videos or bot-amplified conspiracy theories. Even the Trojan horse lives on in cyberattacks, where malicious code lurks in seemingly legitimate software updates. The tools are sleeker, but the goal remains identical: manipulate perception to control outcomes. Yet the most enduring legacy isn't a technique, it's a mindset. Ancient spies understood that technology alone doesn't win wars. It's how you weaponize human psychology. A Babylonian agent bribing a scribe to alter star charts wasn't so different from a modern hacker fishing for login credentials. Both exploit trust, curiosity, or fear to bypass defenses. When Russian operatives pose as journalists to extract information, they're replaying the same script Persian merchant spies used on the Silk Road centuries ago. This continuity exposes a timeless truth: no firewall can fully guard against a determined human adversary. The encryption algorithms may grow more complex, the surveillance drones more precise, but the heart of espionage still beats to the same rhythm it did in Thebes or Troy. As we navigate an era of AI-driven spycraft and quantum computing, the whispers of ancient operatives remind us that the most sophisticated systems will always have one vulnerability: the people who use them. And in that vulnerability lies both peril and possibility, just as it did when the first spy slipped through a city gate, carrying secrets that could topple kings. From the coded messages of Sparta to the hidden networks of the Silk Road, ancient espionage was a craft of brilliance and danger. These early spies didn't just gather secrets, they rewrote the rules of power itself. Picture a world where a single scrap of papyrus could determine the fate of a dynasty, where the flicker of a torch on a distant hilltop might signal an approaching army, or where the quietest whisper in a crowded marketplace could unravel years of careful planning. This was the high-stakes game these operatives played daily, and their legacy lingers in ways we're only beginning to appreciate. What's astonishing isn't just their creativity, it's how familiar their challenges feel. The Roman frumentarii worrying about intercepted messages might as well be modern cybersecurity experts battling hackers. Persian merchant spies navigating the politics of the Silk Road would instantly recognize the delicate dance of today's corporate espionage. Even the psychological tactics Sun Tzu prescribed, spreading confusion, exploiting fear, mirror the disinformation campaigns flooding our social media feeds. The tools have evolved, but the human elements of trust, betrayal, and deception remain unchanged. There's a deeper lesson here, too. Espionage has always been a double-edged sword. For every empire built on clever intelligence, another crumbled because it grew too reliant on lies. The same techniques that protected borders could just as easily corrupt from within, turning spies into blackmailers or assassins. Ancient rulers learned the hard way that a network of informants is only as strong as its weakest leak, a truth that echoes in every modern data breach or whistleblower scandal. Yet amid these cautionary tales, there's undeniable brilliance to celebrate. The Spartan citale and Caesar cipher weren't just practical solutions, they were flashes of genius that laid the groundwork for modern cryptography. The Silk Road's intricate web of merchant spies previewed today's globalized intelligence networks. Even the humble pigeon messenger finds its descendant in satellite communications. These innovations remind us that necessity doesn't just breed invention, it refines it across centuries. So the next time you tap out a coded text or double-check your privacy settings, take a moment to tip your hat to Antiquity's shadow warriors. They may not have had algorithms or encryption software, but their ingenuity shaped the world we live in, one carefully guarded secret at a time. And if you've enjoyed unraveling these threads of history with us, let us know in the comments which ancient spy technique fascinated you most. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's hidden corners. After all, as any good spy knows, the best stories are often the ones waiting just beneath